this is Dread from Epic Builds. And in today's video topic, we're actually going to be going through and reviewing every build that I've made for patch 8.4 so far, starting from this Spriggan build, which was the first build of the patch that I made, all the way to the Explosive Totem Werebear. Now, I will be uploading a few other builds after this. I have a few others planned, but we're just going to go all the way up to here and then just because there's a staggering amount of builds to review. And we're going to review it on kind of like a 5-star basis. I know like these are kind of like meme tier. It's like whatever, right? But like it does add a little bit of context to like how I feel about the builds and how they performed. So the first one is going to be Spriggan Aspect of the Viper uh, Beastmaster. So this build, it was a little like the biggest problem with this build was because when they released Druid, the Spirit Thorns from Spriggan form, it has a less ailment chance modifier on Spirit Thorns, 40%, because it shoots out 3 projectiles, kind of like Flurry. The problem is if you use that for poison, specifically this build, the 40% less ailment chance is even more punishing for a poison build than, let's say, like a bleed build, because poison is built around having as many poison stacks on the enemy as possible, because the more poison stacks you have, the more exponential your damage is. So that 40% less hits us really hard in comparison to like other ailments. As you can tell, the damage is kind of like okay, especially after we get through the 50% less damage taken. I think the DPS on the dummy was like 200%, I mean 200k, which is like not really like amazing for a poison build, but for a like a freaking for a Spriggan build, like that's amazing. So I think we're gonna say like this is 3 stars. I would say that this build is good enough to play, but it has its problems. There are a few ways we could fix these problems now if I played the build again, but it's still not going to perform as well as some other builds on this list, specifically poison builds. The next build was a showcase of a new set mechanic. So there was a new item, well, new set introduced. Well, introduced more like it was buffed. There was set items were buffed this patch because of legendary items, and specifically one of them, Shard of the Shattered Lance. The set bonus was turned from like something health regen focused into 15% increased melee cold damage per 10 flat health regen on your character sheet. And this allows you to stack an ever living fuck out of increased melee cold damage. Now, I did not choose the proper skill for this. There are builds that are better than this. This build pretty much what I would call failed. It was more of an experiment of the set, and there are better builds that utilize this set. Now, specifically, you know, like Earthquake Werebear. If we're just going to compare builds, like Earthquake Werebear is just so much better than this. And you can tell by the view count as well that everybody didn't like it either, which is okay because I didn't like it either. So, yeah, this build's kind of okay. It's just like I said, there are better things to be doing with your time. So definitely like 2 stars, I would say. Like it's playable, but it's not like good enough to merit another build guide or anything like that. It was just more of a experimentation of sorts. Now the next build, Swarmblade crit. What is it called? The swords, the Shattered Lance swords. This build though was way better. So we were doing the same exact setup with the, you know, the Shattered Lance set. Now we're doing it on Swarmblade, and the reason why it's way stronger on Swarmblade is because not only does it have a lot more attack speed, just has a lot more scaling in general. Like specifically the combo of being able to utilize the frenzy and haste from dog from the wolf howl and the increased melee damage, and that on top of all your health regen, your leech, your armor, your dodge, just everything that you get just by being a swarm blade and the faster attack rate, it definitely went a tier above and beyond the other version, and this was also the first like Swarmblade I had ever seen being utilized, because Swarmblade at the time we didn't understand how it functioned. But yeah, if you want to play crit Swarmblade and do damage with your attacks, like your attacks, this is definitely the build for you. Uh, Sadly, there's not really much else you can do to make this build better. It's kind of sad. Like pretty much you go through the route of just being tankier, right? That's okay, but it's definitely the tankiest smelly build I've played. So I would say like 4 stars, because like it's fun to play. But yeah, Shattered Lance definitely was underperforming at the time. Now the next build was what I would like to call the best build of the patch, in my opinion. It is Cold Dot Werebear Maelstrom Entangling Roots. So the idea of this build is we are strength stacking in Werebear, which is giving us a bunch of flat adaptive damage. And we can do all this and proc a bunch of Maelstroms in Werebear form using Warcry and Entangling Roots. Now, it may not look like very strong because we're in a tier 3 Jurla right now, but later on, someone adapted this build to do T4 Jurla and get up to like 500 corruption. So this concept was pushed really hard. Entangling Roots, being able to, stun and lock the entire screen and kill them, like absolutely insane. Like just overall, like Maelstrom Bear was just like one of the best feeling builds of the patch. And it's really funny too, because it is by far one of the least, like one of the most ZDPS builds I have ever showcased on the channel. And it does like 100k DPS on the dummy, and it doesn't matter because you're so tanky, you leech so much, you feel so good, you can stack so much armor. Like, who gives a shit, right? Who gives a shit about doing damage when you just don't die? And the Monolith gameplay is so amazing because you just walk through, you maul everywhere and entangling roots everything, and you use Maelstrom for your single target damage because it was reworked to actually do damage this patch. So all in all, I am very proud of Maelstrom, Cold Dot Werebear, and of course we'll be reiterating this later on, which I'll show you later. 5 stars for Maelstrom Cold Dot Bear if you didn't understand that. Now, Abomination, this build, haha, I love this build. So we're just doing A-bomb things, A-bomb punch things. It's been a thing, been known in the community. People have played this build before. It's definitely not new, but utilizing it for T4 Jurla farming was pretty new at the time. Just simply having the A-bomb just sit in those AoEs and tank them like that, and being able to be tanky as a Necromancer to tank all of Jurla's bullshit attacks like that. Not that one specifically, but just being able to just do T4 Jurla at the time was very, very crazy, because there was a lot of builds that could not do T4 Jurla. So just having a build that could literally farm T4 Jurla is amazing. Now, there are better builds now that we know of that have been released after this, but this is definitely the cheapest T4 Jurla farmer I have ever made. Uh, and I've seen so far through the community. All the other T4 Jurla farmers require a little bit of investment to get into. This one just requires you to like just have decent rares and maybe a few levels to A-bomb, and you're just fine. But like overall, I really think like this is one of the best builds of the patch in terms of just being able to, you know, do T4 Jurla, right? Now, I actually it was so funny. This build's so good that I actually got like called out for cheating, like by like 2 drunken idiots on stream. It was hilarious. Like it was really funny when that happened, because it's like the build's like so good. Like plenty of people, other people played it and farmed T4 Jurla with it. So it was really funny to see that like this build is so strong that like it merits being called a cheater. I love that. Like it made me feel so happy when that happened, because it's like, yes, I'm finally making good builds, right? So 5 stars. This is probably going to get nerfed, by the way. Uh, and of course, you could always turn it into the projectile A bomb, which is another really strong build for monolith farming, because I got to like 400 corruption with that. So like, there's just a lot of versatility with Necromancer this patch. Definitely going to see some nerfs. Umbral Blade Shadow Daggers. So Shadow Daggers has a long history, mainly just a lot of nerfs and stuff like that. As you can tell, the damage is absolutely ridiculous when you get everything set up. because, of course, Shadow Daggers. Now, you can apply Shadow Daggers on hit with Umbral Blades as long as you're holding a dagger. Now, I don't know about you, but I thought EHG removed Shadow Daggers pretty much from the game because they didn't remove it, but they effectively removed it because they're like, well, we don't want Shadow Daggers to be your main source of damage. But then they release Umbral Blades, and it's like the same thing. So it's like, this is just confusing, but definitely one of the better builds of the patch in terms of DPS. I couldn't make it tanky enough for T4 Jurla, but I'm sure if you just like put on a Ravenous Void, did some armor stacking, you could easily do T4 Jurla. The damage here is absolutely ridiculous. This is a modless Oribus because I wanted to see the comparison in damage, and as you can tell, we just freaking absolutely chunk him at like 300 corruption. Now, like, if he had a few mods, oh boy, it'll add like 5 seconds to the kill time. It's like really fun. I really enjoyed this build. It's definitely how a throwing build should feel like. Now, it's really funny to see that like the original version of Umbral Blades is absolute hot garbage, but as soon as you make it do the explosions and the blade traps and all that, they're insanely strong. So yeah, oh yeah, that's why I included the clip, was because I died to him. Yeah, that was funny. I could have easily of got rid of some tanking, got rid of some damage to get build tankier. 5 stars, 100%. Smelters Wrath, Forge Guard. So we're doing the same thing with the Shattered Lance set. So Smelters Wrath and Shattered Lance are definitely a lot more, what do we call it, balanced towards each other. There's a lot more synergy because the Shattered Lance doesn't have attack speed or crit, but Smelter's Wrath deals with both of those. Like, you don't need attack speed with Smelter's Wrath, and you get a bunch of AoE with Smelter's Wrath. As you can tell, I'm doing absolutely ridiculous modifiers here in this footage. Uh, and the regen is insane because you're being forced to stand still to channel Smelter's Wrath, right? To all the way till it crits. Well, having all that regen means that, you know, you don't die when you're channeling it, right? That was an insane amount of synergy. Definitely a fun build of the patch. I wouldn't say a good build, but as you can tell, like, we're tanking like freaking multiple void horrors with like deadly rare enemies, increased damage, and all that. So like, obviously the build is good, but it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea. It was very expensive to make because you need double shard of the Shattered Lance plus the Shattered Lance relic. So that would be a lot of farming. But I think if you like Smelter's Wrath, this is definitely the way to go. And Smelter's Wrath is definitely very close to being a competent archetype in the game soon, hopefully. Just needs a little bit of help and it'll be good to go. So yeah, that I think Smelter's Wrath, it's definitely 3 to 4 stars, like 3 stars, because it's playable, it's fun. It's just not like, oh my god, like we're clearing screens per second kind of thing. Like, you have to stand still to clear the screen, but you're tanky enough to deal with it. So it's like you can tell there, it's like I could just sit there and tank it all day. So, 3 stars. Poison Swarmblade. So the way that this build works is you attack with your Serpent Strike and you proc tornadoes. As you can tell, the footage is very laggy because at the time Bleed was lagging my computer because this was before I upgraded my RAM. But as you can tell, the damage is absolutely ridiculous when you get all the tornadoes on the same target, and it's because they're all applying global poisons. And this just overall, just one of the best builds I've played this patch. It is like I think it was like getting to 2 million ticks when I was finished with it. It's just insane. Like, everything about this build is insane. You had insane dodge, insane armor, insane damage. Being able to bypass the mana mechanic and being able to spam tornadoes like this without having to actually cast the tornadoes is absolutely insane. Having all of the legendary system to get all the poison chance, like, this build just felt so good. And the grouping thing, where if you attacked a group of enemies and spawned a few tornadoes, and how the tornadoes would suck the enemies in, it made clear feel a lot better than other Swarmblade builds at the time. So it is definitely a build to play. And it's probably going to be something that gets nerfed this patch, well, next patch in patch 8.5. So yeah, 5 stars. Definitely one of the best Swarmblade builds out there. Abyssal Echoes Void Knight. Oh boy. So there was a problem in the community, and the problem was there was lacking a quality Devouring Orb, like Void Knight spellcaster build guide out there. Perry has one. It just was outdated. So I was like, after the nerfs to crit Devouring Orb, I'm like, well, we can just go Abyssal Echoes. And I was completely right. After this, someone won a hardcore vision tourney. If you don't know, they're like a 4-day weekend race, and where you start with nothing and you just play and try to get as far in the arena as possible. Someone took this build in hardcore all the way to wave 500 in arena, which at the time is absolutely insane for a 4-day weekend. So yeah, I was right. This build, this version that I'm playing right now is a dual wield version, and it's a lot squishier, but it has a lot more DPS output, and it also is much quicker than its tankier brethren. But overall, like, the build felt amazing to play because you have the Abyssal Echo mechanic, being able to place it down and your Devouring Orbs proccing them as you move through maps. Obviously, it's a little laggy because this was still when I had the lag problems. Yeah, as you can tell, like, I just place out Abyssal Echo, everything just dies. They just die of space aids. It's amazing. Uh, like, it's like Devouring Orb, except better because you don't have to worry about dodge because you're not critting, you're just applying the Abyssal Echoes degen right through without having to deal with that. You don't have to deal with glancing blows, right, which the crit version had to deal with. You don't have to deal with crit avoid, which the crit version had to deal with. So if you wanted to push corruption, this was definitely the build for you. This build's also T4 Jurlifiable as well, as long as you stack some armor with Throne of Ambition. So all in all, this build was absolutely insane, very fun to play, and a lot of movement speed. Definitely one of the better builds of this patch. Definitely 5 stars. Decoy Umbral Blade. So this was a update to an archetype that I enjoyed. Uh, so we were playing Ignite Cinder Strike before, and it was okay. It was fine. But Decoy, oh boy, Decoy. As you can tell, it's lagging a little there because my bleed problem at the time. We eventually fixed that. But so Decoy, with the relic, the decoy relic, you're able to just spam decoy, and it's amazing because decoy has an insane amount of damage, as you can tell if you just hit. Oh, I remember now. Yes, it was super laggy with the bloodshade. Yeah, but umbral blades allowed you to clear monoliths much quicker, because the biggest problem with the old version was whenever you did not have decoy, you were SOL, right? But now that decoy applies shadows when you're thrown, and you can proc those shadows for umbral blades, which we're igniting with, like, we're doing damage with throwing attacks and stuff like that, right? It allows you to clear packs that you normally wouldn't be able to because your decoy is on cooldown. As you can tell, it has an insanely long cooldown, even with the relic. But being able to throw down a smoke bomb, summon some shadows, and being able to use them to clear packs like that, as you can tell, it helps a lot. And of course, having decoy on a 6-second cooldown is absolutely insane. And of course, Cinder Strike is giving you throwing flat damage, which is applying to your Cinder Strike and your Umbral Blades and all the daggers you throw out. So, like, overall, a very synergistic build, lots of damage, really fun for Marksman overall. The health on crit is absolutely insane for an archetype like this because you're just simply out sustaining everything that could possibly hit you. And overall, I really love this build, and so did Amarathi as well, a friend of mine. And I think this build's fun. Does that mean it's the best build you could be playing? No, not at all. It's like 4 stars. It's a fun build, good build. You can play it, you can refine it. It's fun to play, but definitely having to wait 6 seconds for decoy is a downer. So it is not for everybody. So definitely 4 out of 5 stars. Warpath Flameburst 2.0, the Christmas special. Ah, so there was a lot of problems with Warpath this patch that EHG fixed. So apparently, the added ailment effectiveness is supposed to apply to the flame burst that comes from Holy Aura. So you don't flame burst as often as you used to, uh, because you have a 40% less chance to proc the flame burst. So the way it works is Holy Aura applies flame burst stacks, quote unquote, at 100% chance, and then it gets put to 60% because of Warpath. So it's a lot less consistent in terms of single target DPS. Now for clearing, there's no like change whatsoever. It's just the same damage, just everything is like whatever, right? But for single target, it was a lot less consistent, so we had to fix things. As you can tell, we are doing insane amounts of damage for a shade that has glancing blow and HP as well at, I think it was 400 corruption, by the way, just so you know. It's because we're doing a Devotion Smite setup because we're utilizing a Warpath to proc Smite while we're Warpathing because it gets the 100% fire pen while wielding a scepter, which allows our smites to hit for a gigaton. And of course, we mana stack with our Devotion, and absolutely insane. The everything with the build is fine. It feels amazing to play this version. This version's a little more expensive than the other version. If you don't care about single target, you can play the other version and be just fine. But if you want to kill things much quicker on single target wise, this is the build for you. Definitely 5 stars, one of the better builds to patch still. Even with the nerf. Volatile Zombie Recycle. So the way this build works is we're trying to find a kosher way of building the recycle kind of properties of Dreadshade. So Dreadshade has a node in it that allows you to resummon a zombie on a minion death that is, applied with Dreadshade. Now we're utilizing it to sustain big zombies. So if you don't know, big zombies, they get a bunch of AoE, a bunch of damage, a bunch of HP, but they cost a lot of mana. Now, normally being able to just summon the zombies is actually annoying because, it's a lot of mana and it's not really worth your mana. But when you're able to recycle it with your Dreadshade, like I'm doing here, you can actually do a lot of damage. Sadly, due to just lack of base crit overall, we could not reach 100% crit with zombies no matter how hard we tried. So sometimes you will not be, critting, but we're critting for like 700,000 on the dummy with this thing. So obviously it's not bad, it's just inconsistent, which of course is not everyone's cup of tea, but it's a fun build overall and definitely one of the cheaper builds on this list because this requires no uniques whatsoever. Obviously you eventually want a Logies to make the build feel good, but as you can tell, the clear, the damage is all there. It feels amazing. There are a few things I could do to fix it now that I could play it again, but overall, shut up, Creative Cloud. But yeah, I enjoyed this build. This was a fun build, but definitely not everyone's cup of tea. 3 stars. Other Necro builds are better, obviously. So next build. All right. Oh boy, this is the fun one. Swipe Beastmaster. So, Boss DR. Yeah. So Boss DR, if you don't know, was introduced a few patches ago. Pretty much the way this works is the more damage you deal to a boss, the quicker the DR comes online and the less damage you do. As you can tell, we started this fight with like 20k hits with Swipe, and it goes all the way down to like 6k hits with Smite. I mean, it will Swipe from Beastmaster. That is Boss DR. So it's supposed to make it so boss fights last longer and they're not trivialized. And of course, it's the major anti-fun mechanic of the game currently. Overall, I really like the build. It's a really fun build. And with the nerf slash buff to aspect of the shark, where it made it a lot more, averagey. So you could only get to 10 stacks, but each individual stack was buffed. The base was buffed, so it's easier to like clear monoliths easier. Because before, like when you're doing monoliths and stuff, it kind of felt bad. But now with the average aspect of the shark stack being better, it means that the build feels better overall while clearing monoliths. And being able to, use crystal swords, being able to Rune of Creation, a really good crystal sword, just everything about that made this build feel so much better. The single target damage is through the roof. I'm sure if you dumped a little bit of damage and actually went for a Throne of Ambition setup with some armor, you could definitely do T4 Jurla with no problems, because I don't think T4 Jurla has DR, or at least I'm not aware if she has DR, but I know Shade does. As you can tell, the damage is absolutely ridiculous for 300 corruption for a Swipe build, considering Swipe's supposed to be ZDPS. So 5 stars in my opinion. Definitely 5 stars. One of the most fun builds of the patch, definitely. This build was kind of a crazy kind of build archetype. So we were utilizing Bear, Summon Bear, and we wanted to deal damage with the spell of Summon Bear. And I wanted to prove to someone that Multiform was kind of okay. So the idea is we multiform swap between Werebear and Swarmblade, and we provide a bunch of buffs to our Summon Bear. Now, this build, not a good build, but it was more of a testament to showcase the multi-form skills and stuff like that. And of course, Summon Bear was one of the better summons to take advantage of this. This is the only multi-form build I've ever made that has felt okay. And as you can tell, it's not even the best build ever. But as you can tell as well, I have like triple HP as well. So like on this Orbis at 300 corruption. So obviously, and we're doing like 50k crits and stuff. So we're doing damage. It's just, you know, the clear was kind of mediocre because you have Retaliate Bear, but like overall, like the build was fine. It's just multi-form in general is just really cringe in my opinion. It's just like it's really hard to justify swapping forms to give your, you know, minions a bigger buffs and stuff like that. Like overall, it's just not worth the effort. There are better builds you could be playing, right? But overall, if you wanted to play Summon Bear, this is definitely one of the better builds for it. If you wanted to play multiform, this is the only build you could probably play and feel good. So yeah, multiform, I would say 1 star. It's not good, just more of a showcase of you can make it work if you want to. Yeah. Next build. Speaking of 1 star builds, Warpath Physical Crit Warrior's Fury. So EHG on multiple occasions has nerfed the physical crit archetype of Warpath. Like if you wanted to go physical crit, it's just absolutely garbage in comparison to everything else you have at your disposal. And as you'll see later, I completely knocked this build out of the park in terms of DPS with just simply a few changes and going to Void Knight. This build is definitely not worth playing, but it was more of a showcase of how you could make Warrior's Fury work. But it is definitely not a good build, and I will not entertain it. 1 star, absolutely fucking terrible. Hail of Arrows, Marksman, Bleed. This is probably, I would say, the second best build of the patch. So we are utilizing Sanguine Horde and a bunch of the other bleed uniques to do an insane amount of single target, and also as well have really buttery smooth clear. This was also when I finally got to updating my computer setup and got the RAM, so I no longer, you know, lag to bleed. And as you can tell, the damage is absolutely insane when you get everything set up properly. This was a very difficult shade. As you can tell, we had double increased damage, movement speed, increased health, increased damage. As you can tell, this is a very nasty shade. So it just showcases how strong the build can be. The build was very tanky. It was very fun to play. Had a lot of damage. As you can tell here, we're doing like 3 million pops on the dummy right there. There you go. It was like 3 million pops. It was really funny. I had multiple people complain to me that this was not a 3 million pop. 1 second. There you go. That's a 3 million pop, by the way, because 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3,242,000, right? Absolutely insane. Perry went and made a channeled flurry version with like Rain of Winter and got insane pops with it, but that build feels infinitely worse than this one in terms of clear because you're able to just simply apply your hail of arrows, move on. You have insane amounts of leech. Like I like this version better because it just feels better for monoliths. Being able to just slap down at HOA and then move on, right, is so much better than having a bunch of single target, right? But I think both builds have their place. But I really like this version because being able to just slap down at HOA, not having to worry about dodge, not having to worry about dodge in general, because I think you can just do dodge like all the time with this build. Like I think this build is amazing. Just everything about it is just amazing. Just everything. Just play the freaking build. It's like it feels so good. It's like right next to Cold Dot Werebear in terms of like amazing, right? So overall, I have 5 stars. If I could give it 6 stars, I would. Bleed Warpath. So another archetype that EHG has nerfed multiple times in a row. Don't play this build. This is more of a hey, I'm gonna update the build because I love Bleed Warpath, but it is definitely has seen better days. You can be much tankier this patch with Bleed Warpath. There's a lot of things you can do with legendary items. Like you can make the build work, but there are better Warpath builds. Definitely tankier Warpath builds, specifically Judgment Warpath. So overall, like, eh, I would say 3 stars. You can make it really tanky, but it's just not worth it, in my opinion. Wook's Wraith Summoner. Ah, yes. The build that rocked the whole game at its core. So Wook was messing around with Wraiths, a viewer of mine, and she realized that if you made Wraith stationary, right, with the node inside its tree where they can't move but they deal double damage, it actually makes their AI like significantly better. Turns out when minions can't move, their AI is significantly better, as you can tell in the footage. We are doing absolutely insane amounts of damage for a minion build, like just actually ridiculous amounts of damage. Like this build is T4 Jurla viable. It is one of the best T4 Jurla farmers I've played. There are better T4 Jurla farmers, i.e., like, probably Poison Flurry and stuff like that. There's a few other builds, but like, this is the best build I played for T4 Jurla. And oh my god, it feels so good to play a Wraith build that doesn't feel garbage to play or lags your PC. Now, this build's probably going to get nerfed right into the ground, but have fun with it while you can. I just absolutely love this. It's also the winner of a few tourneys as well, recently with Perry playing it. And just overall, like, the build feels amazing to play. It is like what totems should be, in my opinion. This is how totems should feel, you know, but whatever. Oh, it was also the first time we utilized Vessel of Strife. Vessel of Strife is a new unique that was added this patch. It's a drop from T4 Jurla, and it pretty much it gives you 60% of your health regen as ward per second. Pretty much it just reads 60% more health regen. Now, it's really strong for Necromancer because Necromancer lacks terms of sustain, but this allows you to go health regen on Necromancer and not feel bad for not investing into max health, because you can tell I have like 2k ward and 1700 life. So I have a max of like 4k life, right? Technically, quote unquote, and that helps significantly in terms of like quality of life. Now, you could go for the other version where instead of going for health regen, you can go for the new like axe, the Usurper's Mandate, which gives you HP on hit. That works just as well. But I really enjoyed this version. And 5 stars, if I could give it 6 stars, I could. I would. Also, as well, of course, gonna get nerfed into the ground next patch. So have fun while you can, probably. Bleed, Hammer, Throw, Smite. So the reason why I am showcasing this build, or as I was showcasing this build, was because there was a lack of quality build guides on hammer throw in general. So I thought I would throw my hat in the ring. And overall, I'm very surprised in how well this performs. This is 400 corruption, by the way. Uh, and bleed damage overall with all the uniques on Paladin, with the shield that gives you global bleed chance, bleed effect, smites being able to apply their 250% more damage to your bleeds. Just everything about this build was absolutely amazing. I loved every single second of it. Being able to clear monoliths like with ease, because smite being able to hit like 5 targets at once every single time you proc it, and of course, the hammer throw, of course, doing a lot of damage as well, and all of your damage being able to be bleed, and you could like use multiple sources of damage. Like overall, everything about this build was just amazing. I just loved it. And the clear was buttery smooth. You lunge into a pack, absolutely explodes with smite procs. Like, really fun build to look at. As you tell, the damage is insane. This is 400 corruption with a gigantic amount of mods. Like, the build's tanky. The build has leech. Like, overall, just one of the best builds I have ever played. Uh, I'm kind of sad that not many people liked it, but like, whatever, I guess, just how it is. Especially with how many people like hammer throw, but like, whatever, right? Doesn't matter. The build was absolutely insane, and I'll probably end up playing it next patch as well. 5 stars. This is the Abyssal Echoes build I was talking about before, but instead of it being monolith focused, this is focused for arena. You use Abyssal Echoes on kind of like a cooldown, but you actually end up getting more damage out of it for clear and stuff like that. This won a vision tourney, hardcore Sentinel vision tourney, within like 4 days, getting to wave 500 arena in 4 days. Absolutely insane. Obviously, he dropped a Ravenous Void into Bastion, but that doesn't really matter, right? Like you can eventually farm one in softcore. That's not a problem. If you really wanted to push arena, those are kind of uniques that you want to be getting anyways. Overall, this build was absolutely insane. I absolutely loved it. Thank you, AlmostPI, for pushing this build. I've been doing this new series where I do Hall of Fame, where I take people that have played my builds and pushed it to the absolute extreme and showcase them. So if you end up doing that with any of my builds, please tell me, and we can definitely do an episode of that. 5 stars, obviously, same build as before. We did that as well for Cold Werebear, 500 corruption, T4 Jurla farmer. Pretty much what Wim did is he went for a much more armor focused playstyle and a little bit less damage, but obviously you're tanky enough to tank most of Jurla's things, right? Like you just didn't give a shit. You just sit there, tank everything, right? 3,800 life, armor, stacking. You had enough damage, not like insane amounts of damage, just enough damage. As you can tell with the way the build works, you can actually kind of like, move through the beams to still deal damage to Jurla while she's like trying to stay away from you. Like overall, I really love this build. Thank you, Wim, for giving me the opportunity to showcase this. 5 stars, obviously. Warpath, Ignite, Forge Guard. So this was when I started doing the wacky stuff of the patch. So I wanted to see if we could make Ignite work with a bunch of legendaries, because one of the biggest problems with Ignite is the fact that all of its damage and all of its like uniques and stuff like that, like all of its damage is gated behind uniques. But with the legendary patch, that means that like obviously you can just turn all those uniques into legendaries and the build should be way better, right? Yeah. Uh, Warpath gets a lot of damage for Ignite. It has a lot of support for Ignite, actually more support for Bleed now, which is why Ignite Warpath is better than Bleed Warpath, which is sad, but it's just kind of how it is. And with the armor stacking, all the legendaries, like this is one of the highest investment builds I've ever done, but definitely a fun one. And I loved absolutely every minute of it. It is very expensive. Don't actually play this. There are better ways to do your time, but if you really want to play Ignite and you really want to play Warpath and you really want to play Forge Guard and you want to like fuck around with the legendary system and see its potential and see how crazy it is, this is definitely the build to play. So 4 stars in my opinion in terms of performance. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean it's cheap. Serpent Strike. Yes. Serpent Strike Beastmaster. So, I actually got a little bit of flack for this build because it's like, Dread, all these other Serpent Strike builds, they're like doing like 4 million ticks on the dummy, Dread. Why is yours doing 700k ticks and like taking forever to like kill stuff? Well, those builds don't tank T4 Jurla though, right? Like those builds literally don't tank T4 Jurla, right? Like all over attacks, most of it, right? That's like the difference is the fact that I can tank T4 Jurla without any like Ravenous Void or anything like that, right? Just being able to tank T4 Jurla, right? It's like, duh. It's like I meant this build to do T4 Jurla. I did not mean it to do a lot of damage. Obviously, you could make Serpent Strike do a lot of damage, but can you make Serpent Strike tank T4 Jurla hits? Not in most situations, unless you build it specifically this way. As you can tell, though, we have plenty of damage for T4 Jurla, so it's like it does take like 2 minutes, but it's a very nice and easy fight. It's not like overly complicated. You don't have to do like 20 different things. Warcry being able to pull Jurla out of the beams helps a lot, so you don't have to like be in her face when she's in the beams and stuff. You're able to deal damage to her, you're able to dodge her attacks, you're able to tank her attacks. Everything about this build was absolutely amazing, and I'm so happy that Serpent Strike has done so well. Now, Bleeding Heart is going to be changed, I believe, but there are ways of around this. It has been confirmed that Bleeding Heart is going to be changed, so this build won't be in the same state as it once was, but I'm sure there are ways around that, which I think we can work on next patch. Yeah, overall, 5-star build, absolutely insane. T4 Jurla viable. Let's go. Umbral Blade Poison. This was a requested build from a lot of people after I did Shadow Daggers Umbral Blades, and I'm kind of happy that I did it because it has an insane amount of damage, as you can tell. Like it's a Shadow Dagger cousin. So this build is a lot more focused on applying a lot more hits because the more poisons on the target, the more damage you do. It's not as good as Poison Flurry, but this is definitely the build to play when Poison Flurry gets nerfed, which is an inevitability. Now, the reason why this build feels so good is because we are utilizing a node in Umbral Blades that turns all your bleed to poison chance for Umbral Blades. And the reason why that's so strong is because it allows us to utilize Puncture to gain a bunch of global bleed chance, which is converted into poison chance. And then, we do that and we do an insane amount of damage, like just for free, like literally for free, just by using the skills alone. So this is really one of the cheapest builds on this list. So like it is like very easily starter viable. It is definitely something that I am going to be showcasing as a starter viable build if everything goes appropriately next patch, if nothing gets nerfed too hard. But I don't think they're going to nerf the poison version. They're definitely going to nerf the Shadow Dagger version, but the poison version probably not. But yeah, overall, really good build, 5 stars, really cheap to get set up. Really recommended. Bone Golem Retaliate Necromancer. So, Bone Golem is okay. It has its problems, but in theory, it should be fine, right? There's no problem. Like, it doesn't do as much damage as it did before, and it's kind of like lackluster in comparison to the other builds on this list, specifically the, what do you call it, the other arc, like the other Necromancer builds, right? And their minion builds in general. But it still has its place. It still does a lot of damage. It's like one of the best clear speed Necros out there. It's just kind of Necro kind of moved from doing monoliths to just farming T4 Jurla. And this build can't farm T4 Jurla because Bone Golem's too squishy. So it's just like, still good though. Like it still clears monoliths, right? It's just not what it used to be, especially after the nerfs, right? So like overall, I still think the build is very good, but if you want to do T4 Jurla farming, there are better builds. But if you want to do like clear speeding monoliths and stuff like that, and this build's very cheap to get set up as well, like all that, that's fine. It's just this 400 corruption, by the way, just so you know. But yeah, overall, build's good, just not as good as the other archetypes on this list. So 4 stars in my opinion. Still really good, still really cheap, still farms monolith, just doesn't do T4 Jurla, which is like the expectation of Necro these days, right? Next, we go to the second archetype that I tried to make legendaries work with. So it is Ignite Meteor Fireball. So this build's fun. Like it's kind of like Cold Dot Werebear in the way where like, yeah, you only have 200k DPS, but it's fun to play, right? Ignite Fireball plus Meteor, like overall was really fun to play. Like I really enjoyed this archetype. Just being able to do that much Ignite damage while also, being able to use all of those legendary items. This build is propped upon just using as many legendary items as humanly possible. And of course, it means that it's very expensive. And of course, this build directly will be nerfed significantly if they if they change Bleeding Heart, which they stated that they're going to be changing Bleeding Heart next patch. So if it gets changed in any significant way, this build will falter and probably not be worth playing. But yeah, overall, really fun build. 3 stars, really expensive, not worth your time, but fun to play. The next build on the list is Javelin Holy Trail. So, T4 Jurla Farmer. I forgot to put that into the title, and people slept on this build. I'm happy that people slept on this build because it means that it probably won't get nerfed and it'll be a good build for next patch. People really don't like Holy Trail Javelin for some reason. And it's like, I don't know why, because it feels amazing to play in monoliths, especially this version where you can kind of like clear monos real easily. And of course, as well, I made this a T4 Jurla farmer as well. You just simply need, I think, Throne of Ambition, and you'll be fine in T4 Jurla. Pretty much what we're doing is we're utilizing a Judicator and we're abusing it and getting our cooldown of Javelin and our, of course, our lunge as low as possible. And we're playing a Void Knight because we get the 40% echo chance with our Javelin, which allows us to cover way more ground. We also get to utilize Anomaly, which lowers our cooldowns even more. So all of this combined means that we get to spam the ever-living crap out of Holy Trail Javelins, which means we have almost as much damage as the regular Holy Trail build, but we get to clear monoliths like significantly quicker because you just use your lunge and you clear the whole screen, right? And you like use and the single target's plenty. Like I said, it's T4 Jurla viable. Like you can tank all over attacks. Like it's insane in that regard. Like, I'm trying to find it. There you go. Trying to find some footage. There you go. Just being able to tank Jurla is nice. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this build. I'm kind of sad not many people liked it, but you know, people aren't going to like everything you put out, and that's just how it is. I really like the build, and I think it's very strong still. So 5 stars. T4 Jurla viable. Aurelius Multi-Strike Bleed Forge Guard. So this was a kind of trying to make Aurelius work. Like, it's like pretty much that Bleed Hammer Throw build that I was showcasing earlier, except significantly worse. So that's really all I have to say about it. 1 star. Aurelius kind of sucks right now. Rhymer Arts Bleed Hazelroot Werebear. So, Hazelroot, yeah. Did you know that it didn't say physical spell? It says physical skill on it when you can proc Thorn Shields with it. Yeah, it turns out you can proc Thorn Shields in Werebear form and become one of the tankiest builds in the game. Bleed Werebear is definitely has been a meme back in the day, but you know, we can do plenty of damage. Being able to just tank Oribus like this, like, is insane with the increased damage and movement speed and all that. Like this right here. Like, obviously, really ridiculous. Not T4 Jurla viable in my opinion though, because the damage is definitely too low to make that work. But it's definitely nice to see that Bleed Werebear is definitely not a bad archetype. It's just you require Hazelroot to make it work, to get to armor cap, and you can just do stuff like this, where you can just stand and shit and not give a shit. Yeah, and the clear is a lot better as well. Like, the clear is a lot better than old Bleed Werebear builds, which I really like. That's like my favorite thing, because the Thorn Shields, they proc and deal bleed damage. So like, your clear is a lot better as well. So overall, I really like the build. I would say 3 stars. It's not like OP, but it's still a fun build. It's really fun to play. Like, 3 stars. Like, being able to tank everything in the game. It's just the damage is a lot lower than what you would expect out of a bleed build, which is like whatever. It's just Werebear in general. So yeah. Decoy, Cinder Strike, Umbral Blades, Frostbite, Blade Dancer. Ah, the meme build itself. So I I kind of I responded to a dev. He was like, "You can't make a throwing attack, Blade Dancer, bow only build work." And I was like, "You know what? That sounds like a challenge." So we ended up playing Decoy Frostbite Marksman. Um, is this build good? No. Is it hilarious to see how insanely strong the Gaspar's helmet is? By the way, the Gaspar's Insight helmet is confirmed to be in not the case. That's not supposed to be that way. It's not supposed to give you 190% increased frostbite. Well, 190% increased freeze rate multi. So this build will be nerfed, and it will just it's more of a meme. So 1 star, obviously. This is a meme build. This is for fun overall. Necrotic Locust Swarmblade. So I have been trying to make a Locust build all patch. They buffed self-casting Locust cast speed, so it doesn't feel absolutely garbage. The damage is kind of there. It's very close. With the Maelstroms, you can almost get to a respectable 200k DPS, but like, the problem is Locusts just feel really bad right now, because even if you make Locust tanky enough to tank all your boss hits and stuff like that, you only get to like a certain amount of Locusts because they have an 8-second duration. And, you know, 8 seconds isn't very that long, man. Like, 8 seconds is not long at all. You know, it's like, so, the devs actually confirmed that they're going to be buffing Locusts next patch. So, hallelujah, right? Good thing. Good. Rive Abyssal Echoes Bleed Forge Guard. This is another one of those builds where I'm kind of sad that not many people liked. I really like Rive Abyssal Echoes. As you can tell, the damage is definitely there, and the leech is there. And everyone complains, Dread, I want to play a melee build. I want to play a melee build. And then Dread makes a melee build, like an actual melee build, and then nobody likes it. I'm like, oh, it's because it's melee. No shit, right? Rive is different though, because it has a pull on its second attack, which allows you to group up packs, and it makes the melee feeling, a lot less worse. And of course, the sustain on this build is insane. Of course, you get to like armor cap, like just everything about this build is really fun. What you do is you consume ignites to give yourself an insane amount of increased physical damage, and then you apply bleeds, which snapshots off your increased physical damage. And overall, the build is really fun. If you want to play a melee focused build that is only melee, this is the build for you. Probably 3 stars. Yeah, 3 stars. Melee builds suck still, right? Then the coup de grace of the patch, my most prized possession, Void Knight Warpath 3.0. So this build is absolutely insane. As you can tell in the footage, I thought I'd make a little bit more fun editing this build because like the video, because it's a really fun build. The damage is absolutely nut tier, getting to 250k crits and like 28 attacks per second. Like overall, like there's not really much that can beat that in terms of DPS. It kind of like blew the Forge Guard out of the water that we were talking about, the physical crit Forge Guard. That's why I kind of didn't really talk about it, because this build is just the superior version of that. So overall, I really like the build. Everyone else really liked the build. It's more of a fun build. Like it's really expensive to get going, but it has a lot of damage. And for Warpath, that's kind of really rare. So yeah, 4 stars. It's just really expensive. It would be 5 stars if it wasn't that expensive to get set up. Upheaval Totem Werebear. Probably one of the best builds I've played this patch. So pretty much the way this build works is we utilize Upheaval and we hit our Thorn Totems and we explode them to deal a bunch of spell physical damage. Now, the reason why I really like this build is because since we strength stack for all of our adaptive spell damage, it means that we can run a Rune Dagger, right? And then run a Bastion of Honor, which means that this build is actually one of the tankiest builds I played this patch. And it has a lot more going for it than all the other Werebear builds, specifically Earthquake Werebear. Because Earthquake Werebear does significantly more damage, but Earthquake Werebear also can't run a fucking Bastion. So, there's a few things that this build does better because of that. And the damage is insane, obviously, for like running a Bastion. So overall, I really enjoyed the build. Being able to pull enemies in, proc Thorn Totems, explode those totems. This reminisces of Wormblaster from Path of Exile, and overall, it's a very fun build. I definitely give it 5 stars. And that's pretty much it for all the builds this patch. I have a few other builds planned for this patch and a few other stuff. I have a few collabs that I'm going to be doing and a lot of other stuff. I did take a break to play Path of Exile because I'm kind of waiting for everyone to come back to last Epoch and stuff. And I have a lot of other stuff planned. So with all that being said, thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you're at, and bye.